Well, hello everyone, it's Michelle, your cruise director here, and on today's Shipmates podcast, I'm going to be talking to the wonderful Benny Darsow. Ben is an incredible stand-up comedian that you may have seen making you laugh on board the P&O ships, the Carnival ships, and of course on land. Join us for a conversation about what inspires us, what it took to get to where we are today, and of course what we love so much about our job, what keeps us coming back for more. Join me and Benny Darsow on Shipmates.
Well, hello everyone, it's Cruise Director Chelle here, and today I am joined on Shipmates by the wonderful Benny Darsow. Hi Ben, how are you?
Hey, good, Shell. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. I'm unexpectedly on land right now, so having a bit of shore leave, which is nice. How about you? Where have you? I see you're in Brisbane.
Yeah, similar story. I think my shore break is a little shorter than yours, but I work a lot less hard. If that makes sense. Yeah, I've got just a couple of nights in Brisbane here, just finishing up in between two of the Carnival ships that are in Australia at the moment.
Nice. Okay. So just to get us started, so everyone kind of knows, the whole idea of this podcast is that it's the best and most talented shipmates that I've met in my time throughout my ship life. And you are actually on my first ever cruise, I think.
That's crazy. I mean, I remember we met early on, and we were looking at a photo of maybe 4 or 5 of us not that long ago. I didn't realize though that was actually your first cruise.
It was indeed. So you were my first ever official comedian that I brought on and off on ships. So you were my first.
Well, I'm glad that you stuck around and actually listened to a few others.
I did, but you never forget your first, do you?
I've been waiting for someone to say that.
So Ben, I know you really well, but the listeners might not do. So tell us, first of all, what do you do? And tell us a little bit about how you got into doing what you do. And then we'll talk about how you kind of moved on to ships.
Yeah, cool. No worries. Well, I'm a stand-up comic amongst a bunch of other things in my life. And that is now a little bit over 20 years for me. I started in 2002. And it probably took about 10 years, I would say, before it sort of got to a point where I decided to get rid of other work and just put all of my eggs in that one basket. And I feel like it's just been kind of, brick on brick from there. It's probably for me 35, 40 weeks a year out of Adelaide, which is my hometown. I get a few days each month just to kind of go back there and touch base with family and switch off and play some golf. But it's something that bizarrely, I think 23, 24 years in now, I feel as engaged with as I ever have.
I'm going to flatter you here, but you don't look like you've been doing it 23 or 24 years, to be fair.
Yeah, the hat just hides so many sins. So, yeah, you're welcome.
You are known for wearing your hats. So let's just touch on you said you decided to kind of put all your eggs in one basket and go for it full time. Clearly, that is more than paid off 20 odd years later. But what was it that first got you into wanting to be a comedian? I'm always interested in comedians' origin stories. I always feel like it's like meeting an Avenger. Like, how did you get from kind of a fledgling comedian? What was your inspiration? Maybe who was your inspiration? And what inspired you?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, it was a little bit of a funny pathway into it, in the sense that I just turned 20 years old and I was doing a commerce degree at Adelaide University, which I did finish. I did corporate finance and marketing majors, so absolutely nothing to do with comedy. But I think the seed had already kind of been planted earlier on in high school. I was fortunate enough to go to a pretty kind of academic and actually sports focused as well high school, which was great. But in grade 9 and 10, they offered out of nowhere just this kind of drama subject, and which was a real sort of, I'm not sure how it is now. I mean, it's obviously sort of 20, 25 years ago, but that was the real kind of different offering from them at the time. And I think it just exposed me, and I guess some of the other people, to sort of something, a little bit different. Everyone was very, very academic focused. It produced a lot of good sports people at our school. And I think that just gave me this little insight into like, oh man, I can kind of like goof around, and this is actually kind of a thing. And unfortunately at the time, if you wanted to keep going with that in the later couple of years of high school, you had to do it sort of externally. So you would have had to have done certain subjects at a different school. And it just sort of didn't seem like the right thing to do. And so I just, went with more of the traditional subjects. But I look back on that and I think, you know what, I reckon, and I had two wonderful teachers. I had a different teacher each year, Mr. Hutchinson and Mr. Eastland, and both of them had sort of performing experience. And I think they just brought kind of a different energy to the table to maybe, some of the other subjects we were getting thrown. And I reckon that had to have been part of the nucleus of sort of, what was eventually kind of sitting there. And I would say one other thing as well, in terms of actually getting on stage, I realized that it was only a couple of months before I did my first gig that I was at my good buddy's 21st birthday party. And I'd known him since he was kind of a kid. And so I sort of had a whole lot of ammunition on him, and we just knew each other so well. And I knew a lot of the people at the party. There might have been 100 people there. And in the corner of the little function room that he'd kind of hired out, I just stood up on a chair and did maybe 10 minutes of kind of roasting him. And it just kind of turned into stand-up. And you talk about like X-Men Origins. I remember just sort of standing there, and I mean, I'd probably be horrified if I actually watched how bad I was, now in hindsight. But I sort of felt this kind of electricity of like, what is this little superpower here? That I feel like I'm kind of harnessing. And if I look back, I would say that was probably the first time I really caught the bug. And then it was only, shortly after that I actually got up and did a proper gig.
That's amazing. So that was your first ever gig, was basically roasting your mate at his 21st.
Pretty much. And actually as well, I remember this is just so random, but I remember being in the bathroom. I was living with my dad at that stage, and it was the day of his party, and I remember him just touching base and going, "Are you still okay for that 21st speech?" And I was like, "Man, I'm too nervous. Like, I really can't do it. Like, I'm not gonna do it, man. I'm so sorry." And he's like, "Dude, you're just doing it." Yeah. So, in hindsight, I think, maybe his confidence in me, might have just been the thing that kind of bumped me over the line to give it a go.
Isn't that amazing? What a baptism of fire. And, it is always so important to have those people that will push you and believe in you and just kind of go, just give it a go, you'll be fine. Talking about inspirational teachers, I know I had one of those. My drama teacher, he's definitely probably not listening to this, but my drama teacher was one of those who I had to do drama as an extra GCSE because I was always quite academic too, and I couldn't fit it in. So I ended up doing it in 1 year rather than 2. And he was like my absolute inspiration. I definitely don't think I would have been where I am now without a good drama teacher. So I feel you on that one.
Yeah, it's very cool, isn't it? And in hindsight, just to kind of look back, and even at the time, you might have enjoyed that person's company or what they were sort of teaching you, but you didn't quite realize the significance until, later on when things have really unfolded, right?
For sure. Yeah, it's really interesting. I live a million miles away now, literally from where I grew up. I'm in a completely different continent. And yet there's a kind of reunion group of teachers from my secondary school. And people always ask, who was the teacher that inspired you the most? And it's so amazing now to see those teachers that everyone from different year groups, we're all very different ages, and we all went on to do very different things. But actually, those teachers that inspired us remain quite consistent throughout people.
Wow.
The same names come back time and time again. And they think it's probably nice. Most of those teachers are still around. And, I'm sure they can see on those that they made a real impact. And talking about making an impact, I think, what we do on ships is quite incredible that, when the guests come on, they're getting such high quality entertainment. They're getting to see people like yourself who would normally headline. They're getting to see you do your shows, and you're getting to kind of make an impact on them as part of their kind of holiday. But how is it different performing on ships than doing a gig on land? Is there any difference, or is it, how is it? Do you have to prepare differently? Do you have different sets? Like, just tell us the differences.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of differences content-wise. I think one of the learning curves very early on, 2016 was the first ship that I did. I did the little baby P&O Pacific Aria out of Brisbane, which was a little floating rubber duck. That thing just, if there was waves out there, that thing was bouncing. It was this really cool kind of like two-tiered, almost like loungy style theater that they had us in. And so I remember the first time I even got shown that theater, my jaw dropped. I was like, I'm used to performing in shitty bars and, like pubs and, dingy little kind of nightclubs. And then all of a sudden I'm standing there in this thing with like plush red velvet and like this stage that's big enough for a full production show. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So this is the new environment. And, I was lucky enough to have a couple of cruises on there pretty quickly. And I think I just realized straight away, I'm like, certain things that work on land, work on the water. Certain things that work on land don't work on the water. Certain things that are weaker on land become stronger on the water in that environment. And so that was sort of just I guess a bit of a feeling out process as to like, what do people have the attention span for? What are they kind of interested in hearing about? I think a big thing you kind of have to remind yourself of is they're on holidays. And I know that sounds ridiculous and extremely elementary, but of all of the things that you could possibly do as a stand-up comic, you kind of have to remind yourself they're getting away from a lot of the troubles of the world. They're, in a reasonably good mood. They probably want to be pretty relaxed and not think, way too hard about anything. And I think it just kind of directed me to absolutely not get up there and be kind of like, hacky or simplistic. I don't think anyone wants to sort of go out there and put their time to that, but also sort of keep things in a bandwidth of kind of what's palatable. Like, what are these people up for now? And just try, I think, my best within, I guess, those parameters to give them a really good time, but without sort of essentially kind of, taking them out of the headspace that they probably want to be in on a holiday.
That is so interesting. I think that's kind of, it's partly why I do the job, is that I just love being in that environment where everybody is there to have a great time. They might be there for whatever reason. They might be there to celebrate or to commiserate or to bring their family together. It might be their first cruise, their 50th cruise, but they're all there in an environment that they want to have a great time. And I think that's a very special honor to be able to entertain and work with those guests and engage with those guests. It's really interesting. You said, have you got an example about something that maybe works better on a ship in terms of your material that would work better on at sea than on land?
Yeah, I'm with you. Nothing sort of specific, but I think it's more just kind of keep the structure kind of simple. Don't make them have to kind of remember what happened, like 2 minutes ago earlier on in a joke for them to sort of get the payoff. It's like, just kind of keep it here and now. And I think a big thing as well on the ships is just bouncing things off of them, as in like who's in the audience that night, but B, continuing to sort of almost refer back to the fact that you're on a ship. It's like we're in this bizarre environment where, we feel like we're in this kind of like, floating shopping mall or sort of suburb or something like that. But it's like, we're on this metal thing in the middle of the ocean. Like, this is crazy, and just to sort of keep bringing it back to that. So maybe talk about something sort of general or something personal in my life or something sort of universal, but then never getting too far from the fact that, guys, we're all just like in this theater on this ship together, and that's kind of what is bringing us together here.
Love that. I love that. I mean, I overuse that bringing us all together thing all the time, but I really believe in it, that's, what we do on ships is we get to bring everyone together. And I know that you do. I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen you yet that's going to come on the cruise or see you gig. But I know you kind of end with a bit of stuff about our captain normally, don't you? I really particularly enjoy.
Yeah, well, I just cheer for joy whenever I get onto a ship and I hear an Italian captain over the PA system, because I think, well, there's another 7 minutes of material that I get for this cruise.
Yes, if you haven't seen Benny do his captain bit, you have to come on a cruise and see it. Talking about next being on a cruise, when is your next gig? When we'll be able to see you next?
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of your listeners would be aware by now that P&O is merging into Carnival very, very shortly. In fact, I've already started to see certain crew members from the last few years on P&O already getting transferred across into their new roles on Carnival. I'm jumping on the Carnival Luminosa actually in about an hour or so. Just here in Brisbane. That ship splits its time between being based out of Seattle for about 6 months of the year, and then at the start of the Australian summer, it comes out here and services the Queensland market. And it's another one of the ships I really like. I talked about the Pacific Aria earlier on that P&O used to have. The Carnival Luminosa is very similar. It's a much smaller ship than what you've been working on, the Explorer and the Adventure and the Encounter. And it's just got that vibe where after 2 hours on there, people seem to sort of have their bearings, and it has a really lovely familiarity to it.
Okay, lovely. And so are you on the ship? How long are you on ships for at the moment? Have you got any kind of land gig time? Can anybody who's listening that's local to Adelaide see you at any point, or where can they see you on land?
Oh, yeah, sure. At the moment, I'm on the ships a lot. If I get a little window in a particular city in between the ships, which typically tends to be Sydney or Brisbane, I'll do the comedy clubs in those cities. So in Brisbane at the moment, I'm doing a little place called Good Chat. I'm doing the Sit Down Comedy Club. In Sydney, I've got a couple of places that I head to pretty regularly, the Comedy Store, and then also a little place called Happy Endings Comedy Club, which is a really cool little 60-seat venue that's modeled off of sort of the New York style of kind of you walk down a cellar and all of a sudden you're in this little dingy, musky kind of comedy room. And the one thing actually that I'm really excited about, I'm doing the Sydney Comedy Festival. I'm doing my solo show one night only at the Sydney Comedy Store on Sunday, May 11. And I think that would be widely regarded as the best club in the country. And so to have been given my solo we've been given that as my venue for my solo show, I'm really stoked. That one's really in the calendar there.
That's brilliant. And I mean, really, really well deserved. I mean, 23 years of honing your craft, and it's you've got to where you've got to. And I don't think it's been without effort and talent. And, I kind of absolutely adore having you on the ship every time that you're on, because I know that our guests are onto a safe bet. I know that they're going to have a really, really good, solid 45 minutes. They're going to laugh. They're going to enjoy your time. They enjoy your jokes, but I think they enjoy your company as well. I think they enjoy your kind of, the way you connect with them. And like you say, now it makes sense that your approach is always reminding them that we're in this kind of floating bit of tin together, that we get to create these magical moments with. Which is always cool.
That sounded so graphic when you put it like that. I've just become aware that I've got to definitely not get too explicit with the physics and the mechanics of what's going on out there.
Very true. All right, well, we'll change tack slightly. We'll change subjects slightly. I'm going to ask you a few quirky little things. Just obviously, we're on ships all the time, and one thing that we never hope we'll ever have to experience is getting stranded on a desert island. Although we do go and visit some beautiful, beautiful islands. Have you got a favorite port that you visited on your ship?
That's a good question. I tell you, I've got a favorite hotel. I really love where we get put up in Port Vila in Vanuatu. And obviously,
Hmm.
thoughts of going out to everybody there, that earthquake, only a few weeks ago. And, if you haven't been to some of these places, you don't realize, the damage that can do, right? Like in terms of just how sort of vulnerable they are. They don't have the same kind of, infrastructure that we do here. So, we're really hoping that they bounce back and also that we can get them back on that rotation. But the hotel they put us up in is like literally on the water. You're looking out over to a resort called Iririki. I'm not sure. I'll take a guess and say you might have been there. I've actually never been over there, but I get to wake up and pull the curtains back every morning and look at that. So I think honestly, when my time is done, that'll be one of the images that flashes before my eyes.
I love that. Yes, we know Iririki quite well. It's a favourite of the crew when we get to go ashore in Port Vila. Port Vila is one of my favourites as well, and I've been really missing it at the moment. And like you say, everything, all of our thoughts and well wishes are going out there as they're starting to rebuild. And also we've been raising money on board the ship with P&O, with Pacific Partnership, to raise money for them. And I know Carnival have already given as well $60,000 donated to try and help with the restoration fund over there as well. So
That's
we've
awesome.
got a lot of Vanuatuan crew. So yeah,
Yeah,
all of our heartfelt feelings go over there, and we hope that we'll get to go back there again very, very soon.
yeah. That's well.
It's a really interesting thing you just said about being put up in a hotel, because quite a lot of our listeners might not know that. Like, they always ask, actually, like, how does it work for the guest entertainers? Because they know we live on the ship, although occasionally they ask us, do we live on the ship? To which we have a bit of a stock response, which is usually, no, a helicopter comes and takes us in the morning, we do our job, and then the helicopter takes us back away again the next day. I stopped saying that because it did have a lady who went to guest services to complain about the helicopter noise after I told her that. So I don't tell them that anymore. I tell them the truth, which is obviously that we live on board the ship, but you don't. So can you just tell our listeners, like, how does it work? So when you get given a gig on a ship, are you flown out to join the when everyone else does, when the guests get on board, or do you join halfway? You must have a hail of a lot of air miles. But yeah, just tell us how it works.
Yeah, for sure. It varies every cruise. I mean, from time to time, you'll actually be on from start to finish of a particular cruise and kind of ride out that whole journey with people. Other times you might be boarding when they're boarding, but the first port that you stop in at 3 or 4 days down the track, if you've already done your shows, you're off there, and you give them a little wave, and someone else kind of comes on to replace you, or vice versa. Maybe you pick up a ship halfway into its voyage, and the personality of that particular cruise has kind of already been established, and someone's already done a show for them. To be honest with you, I think I like that the best, where people already have a little bit of a feel for the ship. There's
Mm.
a bit of kind of familiarity that's kind of already there within the passengers. They might have already seen a show and got a feel for kind of what to expect, and you sort of come in a little bit kind of hotter on that. But yeah, all up, I think it's just this chapter is not going to last for forever. I'm well aware of that, and I'm also well aware that it's really important that I just kind of enjoy it as much as I can, because this kind of rolling thing of flights here and hotels there, and tropical islands, and jumping on this ship and seeing these people and interacting with these passengers, and all of that kind of stuff. It's it's not to be taken for granted. It is a genuinely cool existence at the moment. I'm not sure how many more years my body can take it, and sleeping sleeping in a different bed every kind of 3 or 4 nights. I don't know, but it's something I really massively appreciate, and I think as well, it's just, I'm sure you would have noticed it as well, but you just learn so much. Like, you're just in it, and you just have to learn, right? Like, you learn your craft, learn how to deal with people, learn how to manage logistics, learn how to kind of conserve your energy, or have your health where you need it to be able to kind of meet the requirements. And I think I'm a more mature person and performer, because of what the ships have offered.
That's fascinating. And I think you're right to pick up on the point that we're constantly having to adapt to situations. You know, we've got turnovers of guests as we go from having 3-day cruises, comedy cruises, to 14-day cruises and everything in between. We've got people who are on their first cruise, people, like I said before, have been on their 50th cruise. You've got, if you're put into it, for me, so when I get a cruise, I see the cruise as like a whole journey. So whether it's 3 days or 14 days, I've got to get these guests from completely cold, brand new, maybe excited to be on the ship, to feeling like part of the ship, to feeling like family, to feeling like they're part of something, of a community that's bigger than them, that they're going to miss when they leave. And that can take different amounts of times depending on the guests and depending on what happens. You know, we have to adapt constantly if we maybe miss a port. You know, the people are in different frames of mind throughout the cruise. Sometimes they're tired if they've got early ports, etc., etc. Is you mentioned there's a difference sometimes when you come on halfway and the guests are already kind of quite comfortable on the ship. Are there any challenges you've kind of come across where, you know, maybe you've had a gig on the first night? Is that different to if you were on towards the end? If you've got to go on a gig where there's they've been out all day, or they make, like, say, maybe they've missed a port. Is there ever been a difference in terms of how you feel that audience is when you walk into the room?
Yeah, oh, that's a great question. I think on P&O it's probably a little bit more consistent because we're typically just doing kind of one, you know, theater show, and it's generally not on the first night, and it's generally not on the last night as well. So there's a little bit more, I would say, copy paste with that. But Carnival, the one that we're all sort of, you know, moving across to, they require sort of 4 or 5 different half an hour sets from us, and that includes a PG show as well. So, you know, I'm 20 plus years into performing for adults, and then all of a sudden, you know, part of your job requirement is, you know, to entertain an 8-year-old, or to hold the attention of, like, you know, a young child, and lots of them, you know, along with, you know, perhaps some more maybe conservative or elderly sort of passengers who don't want to come out for the, you know, for the late night kind of, you know, no holds barred show. So that's been a really big kind of, almost kind of like spanner in the works, I think, you know, where you sort of feel like you're ticking along with what you're doing, and then all of a sudden it's like, here, you know, can you do this completely different gear? And initially it freaked me out. The only thing I was telling myself for half an hour was don't swear. Like, that was the only thing going through. But once you've sort of got past that, I'll give you one thing that I think it's actually really positively influenced is you realize how kind of visual kind of kids are, and they respond so much to kind of physicality or you know, a change in voice, and they really light up at that. You don't want to be too sort of, I would say, maybe dry or deadpan or understated, you know, in a way where possibly with a slightly more sophisticated adult audience you could be, you know, and they may well really appreciate that. And so, it's just kind of been fun, like learning how to kind of like ham it up a little bit more for, you know, for that kind of an audience. And I also think it's filtered over to my actual performing in front of adults, where I've realized, you know, all of these other things that people can, you know, possibly respond to that I didn't used to kind of do. And I feel like I'm a more kind of animated, physical, and sometimes maybe sort of silly version of myself at times. And I think anytime you can sort of add a little kind of like strand, you know, to what it is that you do, it just makes your toolkit stronger.
That's it's a brilliant response. I think that's the thing I find about being on the ships and entertaining on the ships, is that you're doing it so often with so many different types of audiences that you just become, like you say, every situation that you could ever think of comes up. And, you know, we all get better at things through repetition, and we all get better when we are faced with challenges. And so that happens constantly on the ships. What for you makes a good gig? What are the ingredients of a great gig?
Ooh, I reckon you mentioned it before, where you speak about the passengers coming in at a certain level where they've all got their sort of work on their mind, their issues at home on their mind. Maybe they've had a big day of travel. They're in a particular sort of headspace. And then it's your job, whether it's over 3 days or 13 days, to kind of take them somewhere. And that is, that's what you're there to do, isn't it? It's to change the space that they're in, so that when that same person is walking off the ship at the end of the cruise, you can almost physically see that like a load has come off their shoulders, and they're lighter and they're happier, and there's a familiarity there that with the environment, maybe with some other passengers, maybe with you guys directly as the entertainment crew that wasn't there initially. I would say something very similar, although mine's just a little microcosm of it. It's maybe a 45-minute patch where I get this little opportunity to take people from wherever they are when they've walked into the theater to hopefully, in fact, sorry, I'll give you two words. And this is something that the owner of the Comedy Lounge in Perth actually told me a few years ago. That's always stuck with me. It's just a really random little quote. He said, "You're here to unite and uplift these people," because that venue is it's a really, really popular venue in Perth. And sometimes, like on a Saturday night, you'll do a 5 o'clock show, a 7, a 9, and sometimes even like a late show. And so when you're performing in that, it's almost like a production line. People are coming in, you're doing a show, and they're going. And he was the one who really illuminated that for me. He's like, and I was hosting those shows. He's like, "You're here to unite these people. So get them from being, a bunch of 200 individuals to sort of one group. And then you're here to raise the energy level that they are all experiencing." And I think in answer to your original question, that's what I try to do with my shows on the ship, is bring those individuals together, take them somewhere cool, and have them walking out of that venue happier and as a group.
Absolutely love that. And that's something that, I've learned about you over the years that we've known each other now, that, and with a lot of the greatest entertainers, comedians that I've met and worked with over my years, is that they're all in it to affect other people. We're all in it to make other people feel happier, or to make other people laugh, or to, make other people smile or go away with a great memory. I love that mentality of that you're there to uplift and energize, because I think a lot of people think being a comedian or a cruise director is about you. It's about you having a microphone and you entertaining people and you talking. It's just become really apparent over the years that the best entertainers are the people that are, of course, we're never completely selfless. We do enjoy, getting the feedback from people, but the best entertainers that stick around are the ones that are doing it because we get our buzz and our energy from changing other people's states of mind for the better. And I definitely just see that in you all the time, even the way you've been speaking on this podcast, that you just really love doing what you do because it makes other people happy.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, no, that's, that's really cool. And yeah, it is an interesting distinction, isn't it? And I mean, you and I and these other entertainers that you will have on the podcast, I mean, we've all been in it long enough that, I mean, we've probably had patches ourselves where you get a little bit out of whack with that, or, there's certain people, within our various industries who you look at and you go, I'm not sure it is entirely about the audience for these people. And for some people, maybe it is a little bit more of an ego thing, or wanting sort of some validation or attention, maybe that they don't feel like they've kind of had otherwise. I mean, like none of us are kind of, completely devoid of that. But I think our responsibility is to be really relentlessly accountable with ourselves about what our product is, what our skill set is, where our energy is. Were we in the right headspace to get up on stage? Every night's different. You can't control everything, but you can create, I think, a reasonably consistent sort of set of circumstances before you get up on stage and do your thing. And be really, vigilant around that. And then beyond that, it's like, this is what we're using to create the result. And the result is all about these other people. And yeah, for me, I think that's the equation right there.
Absolutely. And you talked about preparing. Actually, you're really interesting. I know you, along with Ash Bizame, who's going to be on the podcast soon as well, you have quite strict kind of preparation time and focuses that you do. I kind of know to leave you alone in the few minutes before you go on stage, both of you. So it's great. It's great to hear that's a really important part of the process for you, that's when you're kind of focusing on what you're going to deliver for and with these people. I don't know if you want to share what you do, but
I like hanging out in the sound booth because which is in the venue. It's not sort of tucked away somewhere. So I like watching kind of, who's in the room, what the energy of the room is. I really love like just a little chat, before the show, whoever it is that's going to be sort of doing the back announcement. I don't know. I think it just kind of grounds me. But then I'll never forget you were the first person. Like, I think with a couple of minutes to go before I went on stage, and I went really quiet and distant, and you were like, "Oh, you're one of those performers who like needs the last couple of minutes before they go on stage completely to yourself." And I don't think I'd ever back to you that directly. And I remember that cracked me up, and I learned something about myself as to yeah, like I can't just go directly from chatting with someone to being on stage. I need some kind of little 90-second cocoon where I'm just left with thoughts.
yeah, we definitely know that now, and that's the cool thing about working together. I'm on the ship all the time, but when you all come on, I get to see my friends, I get to see these entertainers that I admire, and I get to know how to work with you all. I get to know how you like to be announced. I get to know what your preparation is. I get to know whether you're the kind of comic that likes to get involved with the game shows, whether you like to come and do Liars Club with us, or whether, it's not for you. So over the time that we get to see you so often, not only do we get to kind of learn and watch and enjoy your material and see you performing, but we also get to learn how to best accommodate you on the ship, because I always think that's quite an important part of my job as well, is not just being able to look after the guests, but being able to look after and best accommodate you as well. So yeah, that's it's something I always know about you. And you actually come onto stage from the sound booth. You don't enter from backstage, do you? You normally come straight down through the audience. I think you're the only comic who does that, as far as I know.
Yeah, wow, yeah. I'm not trying to sort of throw a spanner into the works on that one. I think I don't like the big entrance thing. Maybe sort of triggers nerves a little bit for me. I prefer to almost feel like one of them, and I just happen to be this guy that's kind of casually going to kind of like walk up and take things over from. It's weird as well. Like people they. You would know this as well in terms of sort of like how you dress, how you present, just everything. Like people are taking in everything about you. You know what I mean? Like you control that, but you can't. Like everyone is looking at you, forming an opinion even before you've spoken. You know what I mean? And so for me, walking in from the back of the room, and I sort of try and just give a little bit of a wave in a couple of directions to a couple of the sections of the crowd before I get to the microphone. I feel like what that's doing, that's almost like a free hit, those 10 seconds or something like that, where I'm developing a little connection with them, a little bit of familiarity, maybe a few of them kind of wave back or whatever. And I'm almost kind of like disarming, this is what I feel like I'm doing, disarming, any sort of sense of like expectation of like, who's this big superstar coming out from behind the back curtain? It's like, it's not that. And so by the time I'm sort of at the microphone and I'm them just kind of chatting, I feel like that little window has already knocked down a couple of little walls of the barrier that might sort of exist there. And it just allows me to sort of grip a little bit quicker than otherwise with the audience.
That's fascinating. And it's amazing. I've seen you do that now for a couple of years and never really made that kind of connection about why you were doing it. And now it makes so much sense. It's a challenge for both of us. Whenever we get new guests or you walk into the theatre to do your gig, you have to instantly develop that trust, that rapport, that authenticity, that connection with those guests and with that audience. And I think it's something we're not always conscious of knowing about how we do it. We just do it. But it's a real skill, and it's really interesting to break that down and go, oh yeah, actually, when Ben does that, that's what he's doing. I mean, it's the same for me. Interesting. I don't tend to make too many grand entrances either. And it's just about making an authentic impression and knowing that you are part of them. You're entertaining them, but you're entertaining them as a collective. We're all in this together, and we're all going to have a great time for this 45 minutes. And I think it does make a difference to how, like you say, the expectations. People aren't kind of seeing you as above them; they're seeing you as somebody who's there with them. And I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's really well summed up. And I think, you are a really good example of that. I've seen times when you're on stage, maybe back announcing one of the big theater shows or something like that, maybe later on in the cruise. And so much of what comes across is just your warmth towards them, but also just clearly the fact that your whole intention has been for them to sort of have a great time. And so there's the nuts and bolts of kind of what you're saying, the party's up on Lido, or, that was such and such, or whatever. And, people are taking that into a certain extent. But I think often the big thing that they're walking away with is that feeling of connection with you. And it's a real intangible, but I think once you have it, it can make up for a lot of sins in terms of actually maybe mistakes that we make in other areas. If people like us and they feel comfortable around us, gee whiz, you can get away with murder. And if you do happen to actually be halfway competent at your job and do a reasonable job of it, it's this additional X factor, I think, that can make, a good performance or a good presentation like an outstanding one.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something I learned quite early on when I started off doing a showcast. This is on land, but we also did daytime activities too. So I realized that, I mean, I was a decent vocalist and a decent dancer. I was good enough to be in cast, but I always knew I wasn't going to win X Factor or whatever else. But what I did have was that I developed those relationships with those guests throughout the daytime activity. So I used to love hosting the pool or the darts or the trivia or the bingo, because it meant that when we got to do the shows in the evening, when we had our 70s show or our 80s show or whatever, I had a little bit more license to play around with the guests, with the audience interaction. They already knew me off stage, so then they kind of already felt comfortable with me on stage, and I felt more comfortable with them too. So it was very interesting when I went from that, and then I went to do land gigs as like a cabaret artist, and realized that it was a totally different skill. These people didn't know me. They were coming to the pub or the restaurant or the venue for the evening, and I didn't know them. I hadn't laughed with them over French bowls. I hadn't made a previous connection. So that's something I found more difficult. And I think I kind of really appreciate about you is that, and what you do is that you are having to walk into rooms and instantly win those people over. You don't have 3 days or 5 days or whatever that I do. Sometimes I can have the best first night or the best sail away party, and I know it's going to be wonderful. Sometimes I can feel like, I need to do a little bit of work here over the next few days to warm people up. Whereas for you, your time is so instantaneous between coming on stage and having to and to make them laugh, which is no mean feat.
Yeah. Oh, that's very kind. And it's actually interesting on Carnival with the fact that you're doing kind of multiple shows. I mean, 1 or 2 of them might be family friendly, but 3 or 4 of them might be sort of adult shows over sort of successive nights. And you really feel that. I feel like the first show on the first night, especially if it is genuinely the first night of the cruise, whilst people are sort of getting bearings, it's just an introduction. It's kind of giving them a feel for who you are, where you're coming from, how you speak, maybe how you think. And it's very sort of like basic. You kind of can't do a lot more than that. And if they're a bit scattered or they've been up since 4 a.m. before an early flight to get to the ship, well, they've sort of got a limited kind of pool of energy as well. And then you really see, like, as things develop from there, the second, the third, the fourth time possibly that they see you, you can just go so much deeper into that relationship with them. And I feel like that's a really cool kind of carrot to sort of have sitting there at the start of a cruise, where it's almost like, don't mess this up. Don't mess this first impression up. This doesn't have to be, the world's greatest performance, but just create a foundation. And then, what you can do from there is that kind of, comfort and rapport builds, is the reward.
That's all right. You're back. You're back.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Not, yeah.
Yeah, it is a really interesting thing about, always, for me, I'm always trying to be authentic on the first night. I'm always trying to kind of be very thankful and grateful for people. If they turn up to the late night game show on the first night, then I know they've been up since stupid o'clock in the morning. They've traveled. I'm always very grateful that they've come out to spend the time. My first trivia, my first game show is with them. The next day is normally, the time when they start to get to know me and I get to know them. So it's very much relationship building, which is a real honor as an entertainer. But for you, I guess it all has to happen so much quicker than for me.
Mm.
Okay, we've been gabbing away for quite a while, and I know you've got to go because you've got a ship to check into shortly.
Mm.
But I've just got a couple of quick questions, just cheeky little things. Imagine you are stuck on a desert island. I want to know, what are the 3 things you are taking with you, Ben?
Oh, okay. Desert island. Well, I watched Castaway and I realized how hard it was to start a fire. I'm definitely taking a fire, like a cigarette lighter. I'm taking a 7-iron and a golf ball. That only counts as one thing, just so that I got something to do. And I think as a white guy with German and Scottish heritage, I'm taking sun cream as well.
They're very sensible and logical options. I'm quite impressed. So I'm imagining you practicing your swing covered in suntan lotion by a nice little roaring fire somewhere out there in the South Pacific right now. And you go.
That's a visual that no one needed. I really apologize, everybody.
I can see the cartoon already. And finally, say you were, you're going to be rescued from that desert island. You've got to choose three people to put in your lifeboat with you. They can be famous or non-famous, but I want you to choose your 3 people to go in your lifeboat.
Bear Grylls, because he's capable of actually helping us survive from that point onwards. Gee whiz. I think Tiger Woods. I know he's a flawed human, but man, there was something that he did that changed not just golf, but sport in general. I think he was a really big figure within my lifetime. And Tony Robbins, so that we all stay very positive.
Not sure if they'd all get on with each other though, but I'd love to see it happen.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Maybe Tony could sort out Tiger's, head, and maybe there could be some good resolution there. But no, I'd love to. I think I want to join in that lifeboat actually.
Yeah, and if there was absolutely zero, that is all well and truly with survival in mind. But if there was absolutely no chance of survival, it's me and 3 girls from the Swedish bikini team. That's it. There's just no refunds.
Oh, you've been doing so well up until this point, coming across as such a beautiful human, People were swiping right on everything then, and then, suddenly just ruined it at the end.
Feel free to that out.
Oh, that's staying in. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. You've made me laugh. I'm sure you've made our listeners laugh. And now you're off on another ship to go make some more cruises laugh. Just a shameless shameless plug before we finish. But where can people follow you? Where can they find out about your gigs and keep in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, I would say probably just Instagram, Benny Darsow. I filter everything through there. I love putting little photos up of my travels. I post footage from gigs every couple of days, and I respond to messages. That's the little platform I'm in love with at the moment.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm a bit of an Insta girl as well. So then, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go and check out and check into your new ship. Have a great cruise. Hope you meet some wonderful people and have some great gigs. And thank you as ever for joining me. And I can't wait to see you again. I don't know when I'm going to see you next, but I hope it's going to be very soon.
Yeah, I doubt it'll be long at all. I'm sure we'll be crossing paths real soon as you switch over to the dark side as well.
Yes, I'll be there very, very soon. In just a few weeks, I'll be back on the adventure, which will then be the Carnival Adventure. I'll be based out of Sydney and relaunching that as Carnival Adventure, which is going to be an absolute privilege. So hopefully I'll see you on there very, very soon.
Yeah, so great to chat. Thanks, Shelle, and good luck with the podcast. And thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ben. All right, take care. Thank you.
See ya.
That was Shipmates starring the hilarious Ben Darsow. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I'll see you again for another episode of Shipmates very soon, where I'll be joined by another special guest. Ciao for now.